Hey, welcome guys. Today we're going to be weathering our Takom Halftrack, the Sd.Kfz 250-1. Now, this is obviously a sneak peek of the final product. We will do really a step-by-step as always if you watch other videos on how we got there. I will do this part at the beginning. I might do it at the end too, but please like and subscribe if you have not already, if you enjoy model building content in this channel. But this was an interesting build, right? If you have been following the other videos, the build video and the painting weathering, or sorry, not weathering, but just the painting video, I had some hiccups. There were some instructional errors in the kit. There were some fit issues, and then there were some human error issues that were on my part. So it got put off for a little bit. I ordered Ammo by MIG surfacer putty because I wanted something really, really fine that I didn't have to clean up. So that delayed the build a couple weeks. It felt like an eternity. I think it was maybe only 2 or 3 weeks, but then with the painting, because I had already painted it, I had to go back. You'll see there's kind of a mark by the decal. It doesn't actually show in person, but it shows it's very strong in the camera. So I love the way the model finished, and it is already one of my favorites that I've built, at least recently. I put it on my shelf in my office, which really means that it's like top 10 for me, right? That's kind of where I put my favorites. But we're gonna try to keep it pretty simple. Try not to over-weather it. I think we all kind of have a tendency to do that because it does look cool, but try to find that perfect balance between too much weathering and this looks like it's in a showroom, right? So as always, I don't remember the last time I didn't do this as step one. We're gonna do our panel line wash. And we're just using a basic black wash. There's interior washes and other dark washes that you could use. You could make your own wash. I just have Ammo by MIG's black wash. So we're gonna layer that pretty heavy in here. We're gonna put some pigments and other things in the floor, so don't worry if it doesn't, look perfect at first. We'll get there. But once we have that, we're gonna let that dry. Now, I like to let my panel line wash dry for at least, we'll call it overnight. So what is that, 12 hours or so? Anywhere between 12 and 24 hours is where I'm gonna let that wash dry. Especially when you do this is sort of a sludge wash on the floor, right? You want it to dry, you want the pigment to actually settle. So that right now what we're doing is we're taking our brush dipped in thinner and we are taking off the excess. That way you don't pull the excess out of those little cracks and crevices and that, I don't know what it would be called, diamond plate on the floor. We want the wash to stay within that texture. It was a little bit difficult to weather the inside with the kit put together, obviously. The good news is that there's not a lot of light that shows in there, so I didn't do a ton of weathering inside. I don't think you need to, simply because I also did the canopy half closed. There's not really any light in there. It's really, really, you'd have to shine a flashlight. It's really difficult to see in there. So you're not going to notice it unless you are inspecting it. And I don't personally inspect my models. I'm not making models for a competition, anything like that. So it's good enough for me. But we're also now going to do our panel line wash all along the outside. So I think one of the things that this is my first Takom kit, and there were a lot of pieces. If you watched the review, when I unboxed it was kind of like, wow, what are we going to do with this tiny vehicle and 13 sprues or whatever it was. So it definitely adds a lot of detail, and it makes the model look very 3D, which is kind of a ridiculous statement because all of our scale models are 3D. We live in a 3D world, but it's just that extra detail when things aren't molded on, they pop a lot better, right? It also makes the panel line wash a little bit more difficult. In some places it'll flow, in some places it doesn't, because the plastic's not actually attached, right? It's glued, but maybe it's not glued perfectly. So it gets a little sloppy on the panel line wash in this part, but don't worry, because any of the panel line wash that stays, as always, we're going to brush it downward, brush it in kind of a gravitational direction, and it's just going to build up that first layer of grime on the vehicle. If you don't wash your car for even a couple days, I guess it depends on where you live, but in the Northeast, if I don't wash my car for a week, it looks filthy. So this vehicle, driving around probably Eastern Europe, is going to get really, really dirty. And it's going to get that grime built into the paint, right? So that's what we're trying to do, is build up just that first layer of just dirt, grime, it could be oil or gas or whatever's been spilled on the vehicle or splashed on or whatever. So again, letting this dry for maybe an overnight, we'll call it. I use the brush. The problem with taking off thinner with the brush is the bristles on the brush will reach into all the recessed lines, which is good in some spots, and then in other spots you're going to end up taking off what feels like all of the wash. And it depends what kind of look you're going for. This being such a detailed model, you probably don't need to go as heavy with the panel line wash, but it looked really good, so I kind of kept it heavy. But I like to use the Q-tip in this instance, simply just because it doesn't dig into the areas that we don't want to lift the wash out of. So this is the kit after. We've let it dry for another day or two, let the enamel thinner evaporate and let that panel line wash really settle in. Next step we're going to do, and you could do this first, this is just how I've always done it. Next step is going to be chipping effects. So you can mix your own chipping color. You could use a rust color, maybe not in this vehicle, but a metallic color. There's a lot of different colors you can use. I just have Ammo by Mig's chipping color. It looks great on some vehicles. On this one, that kind of brownish color, I don't know. Maybe you could have gone with a different one, but it's good enough for what I'm doing, at least. And I do like it because it blends really well with all of the dirt. And so if you end up over chipping, which there's always big chips that we put on that we were trying to be more delicate, it ends up blending with all of the dirt and the mud and the grime. So it kind of just is a different layer, right? So we're going to try, I don't sponge chip. I have before, and I don't like the lack of control. Not that using this tiny, tiny brush with my hand that's shaking, probably because I drank too much coffee, I don't have, obviously, 1,000% control there, but it's more than the sponge. If you can't really fix a sponge chip, I guess you could wipe away all the paint, but I don't want to be doing that. So we're just going to go really, really light with that super thin brush and just add chips on really every raised edge and hatches and things that would be opened and scratched. Once that dries, I did seal that very quickly. I just did a very light coat of what am I thinking? TS80 by Tamiya, their clear coat. Now, that does dull down the panel line wash a little bit, so don't go too heavy. If you go heavy, it'll fully dull it out. If you just go light enough to kind of keep that acrylic paint in place, it won't really affect that. Once we have that, we're going to do our streaking effects. So this is just Ammo by Mig's streaking effect. You could technically use anything for this, any wash. This is just really a kind of reddish brown wash, if I'm being honest. And we're also going to do our rain mark effect. So if you've watched any of the past videos, we'll call it a personal struggle to really like any sort of dust effect. They're usually very, very strong. If you put a dust effect next to anything else, it just makes, I don't know, I felt like I was making the entire model look like it was just dust. And I didn't like it, it was too much. This rain mark effect, I think, is the perfect amount of dust look. Yeah, it does look like rain marks. I think it looks more like streaking dust than rain marks, which kind of goes with what I've always thought, is that all of these washes are the same. There's probably only really 5 washes out there. But as consumers, we buy them all because it's fun and exciting, at least for me. So you can see, even with just the first pass, and I do go back and touch this up a little bit, but this dust effect doesn't spread, right? It's staying in its line, where the oils and the other dust effects that I've used really spread as you brush them. No matter how much you try to clean up and keep the brush clean, I've just found this to be really my favorite product for this. You can see some of those streaking effects got a little out of control, but don't worry. It'll all look like it's supposed to in the end. There were some difficult areas here to get the brush to do those vertical lines. So just keep in mind where you think you'll be able to brush off the effect. Worst case scenario, at least keep it somewhere where you could fully brush it away. If you put it somewhere that you can't brush down and you hate it, just enamel odorless thinner and wipe it off. But that is the final look that we're going for. So a little bit of that brown, a little bit of that white, but not too much. I end up knocking down that side right there. And then I haven't spotted yet the underside, where I need to clean up all of that. So I end up hitting that with a Q-tip later. Next up, we're going to do a quick wood wash on the tools. I did use AK's the wood color, what are they called? The real color markers. And if you've watched my review on those, I do not like the wood color. In saying that, it's really, really easy to paint the tools in the paint markers. So I bought them. I'm not going to just use them, not like them, and throw them in a drawer. I'm going to use them. So we have that yellow color. So I'm trying to really knock it down with that AK wood wash. Again, AK's wood wash, it's really just a dark brown wash. I've used like Tamiya's panel liner, the brown one, for tools. I've used the black one for tools, for the wood handles, and they all look good. What I would suggest is do not use thinner when you wipe away the enamel wash from the wood. Just use a Q-tip, like a dry Q-tip, so that it spreads and almost creates like a streaky filter, and then you'll get that kind of wood grainy look. And it's a little bit difficult to obtain, but I personally just try not to hyper focus on it, because once you add pigments, dirt, grime, everything else, it kind of negates any work that you really do there. So just do enough to knock out some of that yellow color, which is what we're trying to do. In saying that, I think that's the Dunkelgelb on the tarp or whatever's rolled up in the front fender there. The wood color, everything that's kind of bright, I wasn't too sure about at first. If you look at the box art, it does look like the canopy and some of the tarps are, pretty bright green, which with a dark model, maybe I wouldn't have done that exact green on another kit, but being just a plain gray model, I wanted to get some color, and I'm actually really happy with how it worked out. Next up, we're going to, this is AK's enamel, like a dry mud. I got 3 of them. There's like dry mud, wet mud, and like dry earth. And then I ended up getting a 4th, the European earth. They are self-fixing. So I had not used this product in this way before. I had used their same product with the rust before, and I was really happy with how it worked out. So I figured, hey, we'll just give this a go and see how it turns out. This is a really interesting product because it is, now it's not advertised as self-fixing, it just in little words in the back of the bottle says it is. But you don't have to be overly careful with how you brush this on. It being a wash, it's going to stay off the highlighted areas, of course, and it's going to kind of seep into the other areas, the recessed areas. But as you can see, as it dries in the front wheel there are no visible streaks from your brush. It really self-fixes so that it looks a lot more natural. And we end up putting some on the inside as well. I didn't film that, but you can see it drying there. Next up on the inside, we're going to use 2 different pigments. I always try to use 2 or 3 different colors of just dirt in general, just to keep it from looking bland, right? If you use one color, it kind of looks washed out in the end. If you use 2, or even better 3, that are all kind of complementary to each other, it just adds that little bit of realism to it, right? Not all dirt is the same color, and this vehicle, it's going to be driving, hundreds of miles or kilometers in its case, and it's going to be picking up a lot of different stuff, and the crew's going to be stepping in a lot of different stuff. So again, we're going to go a little bit heavy with the pigment on the inside. It doesn't really matter because once we put that tarp on there, can't really see inside, but I just tried to shove it into really all the cracks and things on the floor. I don't know how clean these vehicles were kept. I assume not all that clean, but that for me really finished up the inside. I didn't go too crazy on anything else on the interior. I just wanted enough where if you looked in, you'd see, hey, there's something in there, right? There's some wash, there's some dirt, some stuff like that. All right, so next up, what we're gonna do is we're gonna take that same AK Interactive product. You could do this with any mud product. I wanted to test this out and see how this would work for this, because it's really thin. There's a lot of thinner already in this product, which is why it is self-leveling. But I also wanted to see if that self-leveling ability would kind of lend itself to these splash effects. And I think in the end, I really liked this, and I will definitely use this product again for this exact purpose. So I ended up using the dry mud, the wet mud, and then I do a little bit of the European earth, which is a much lighter color, but again, just to get a little bit of difference of color in there. Really simple. We are shaking up the bottle, and it's sort of a thick bristled brush. You don't really need to go that thick. We're just using this toothpick and brushing off the toothpick and getting that splash, that natural splash effect. If you went thinner, the mud effect would be obviously less pronounced. I did find with this product, the only annoyance I had was after about 20 seconds, it needs to be mixed again. I shook the bottle felt like 5 minutes at one point, and all the pigment in it immediately settles. And you'll go to do this and it'll just be thinner. There won't be any pigment in the product. So that's the only thing to watch out for with this product, is make sure that you actually have pigment and it's not just a pile of kind of dirty looking thinner on your brush. But we're just going to go around the whole vehicle. I did build this beautiful anti-splash box, as you can see, using the bottom of a couple model boxes. Just do yourself a favor and do something like that, because it gets really dirty when you do that, and it can get all over everything. Next up, all I'm going to do is use a Q-tip that has a little thinner on it, and really touch some of there were a few big marks that I didn't like, and then obviously some that got in places where I didn't want them. Do it slowly. Don't completely wipe that area clean. What you will find is that a lot of it will just settle in and kind of blend in with the paint, right? And just give it those little tonal differences. Once we get that cleaned up, I did want to add, I always say I'm not going to use pigments. I'm going to, try to do everything, but then I always see an area like the inside here where I don't have much of anything, and yeah, some dirt and stuff would probably build up in there, and hey, let's throw some pigments on, right? Because they always do look good. I feel like pigments sometimes are like a crutch, and I don't think that. I'm pretty convinced that they are. They're a really, really easy way to cover up, mistakes we made and things like that. But they also look really good, and they actually bring, a 3D texture to the model. So we're going to throw them in those recessed areas there on the side of the vehicle. Again, a little bit on the top where the machine gun is. I end up knocking that down a little bit. It was a little bit much. It was just a really clean area of the vehicle, and we needed something. But what we're going to do is we're going to take Pigment Fixer by Ammo by MIG. You could also use just enamel thinner. Wet those areas, and when it dries, it's going to look really, really dark when it's wet. But when it dries, those pigments will be in place. You can then brush and shake off any excess, and you'll have your final product that we have here. So again, if you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe. We'll be doing many, many more. We might be doing the Rommel Halftrack. I don't know. I was about to order it, and it is sold out online. Also by Takom. It's just the desert version of this, which, again, when I first saw it released, I don't know, a month ago or so, 2 months ago, I immediately was like, I'm having enough trouble with this one. I don't want to build another one. Over the past couple weeks, now I want to build another one. Now I really enjoyed building this kit, which is crazy how that feeling on a model can change. So if you're newer to the hobby, if you currently have a frustrating project, stick with it. You can always, make it better. Sometimes model kits just don't look good until the end, right? They look better every step of the way. So the fit issues and the things like that, we can get through that. Hopefully. Sometimes we can't, but really, really enjoyed this kit in the end. I think it has a ton of accessories and just that 3D look, right? And it ends up looking really, really good, especially for a small vehicle. Now, the light on the back left, you can see, is still crooked. There was no way for me to fit anything on. It has its issues, but because there's so much detail and so much going on for really a small kit, it's tiny. It ends up looking awesome. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I appreciate you watching, and I'll leave you with the model for the last minute or so here. Das Schweizer Madel sang so schön.